Hi, how's it going? This is Resident of Collinwood series. I'm here to do my read along review for John Philip Betancourt's continuing blog series, The Return of Dark Shadows, Series 12, Chapter 4, The Open Mouth of a Grave. A late morning chill flowed through the great house atop Widow's Hill. It was like the icy breath of death slowly making its way around every corner of the mansion. This cold filled every room, it touched every wall, and it caressed every hanging portrait of past Collins family members with eyes that watched the current inhabitants of 1966 Collinwood like gatekeepers of secrets long forgotten. This chill that caused the hair to stand up on the back of the neck was not just an environmental abnormal, but a sign from the other side. It was warning, and the one that felt this cold the most was Elizabeth Collins' daughter, who stood alone in back private library, a small and cozy room, staring out of the dark draped window that looked out onto a gloomy, grassy courtyard. Elizabeth was worried. She knew that Arabella was probably in town to stick her nose into her private business, and that truths about various secrets in her life could be revealed. These were secrets that would destroy so much of her, so much that she had worked so hard to keep hidden. She had to figure out a way to handle Arabella's meddling. Something had to be done before it was too late. Penny for your thoughts, or perhaps 300,000 pennies, Arabella said as she arrogantly walked into Elizabeth's private library, dressed to the nines. What? Elizabeth replied with eyes as cold as the house itself. Oh, nothing, just remarking on the amount you spend on Victoria Winters. 300,000 pennies equals out to $300. That's Vicky's wage a week, isn't it? Arabella, what are you doing here, and what business is it of yours? What I pay David's governess, Elizabeth shot back. You said I was welcome, so I'm here. Make me welcome, Arabella answered arrogantly as she cased the library, running her finger across the bookshelf, checking for dust. Elizabeth snarled. This woman, her late husband's younger sister, was clearly teasing her. It was as if Elizabeth was a caged tiger pacing and pacing. I still don't know how any of my affairs are your business, Arabella, Elizabeth said, trying to swallow her obvious aggravation. What business is it of mine? What you pay your bastard daughter, you mean? Well, it's very much my business. When it affects my niece Carolyn, Arabella replied to a suddenly shaken Elizabeth. What? Elizabeth said with a crack and shock in her voice. What did you just say to me? Which part? Didn't you hear? The part about Carolyn or your bastard daughter? Really, Elizabeth, I think we're all well past the pretending to not understand stage of what I'm about to divulge to you. I know who Vicky is. I know you know who she is too. And I know that you've been paying her to be here because, after all, she's your child. There are a lot of things I can do with that information, and you know it, Arabella said. Within the time it took for Arabella to speak to Elizabeth, had already regrouped herself from the shock of the revelation. This was Elizabeth's superpower. With every shocking bit of news, it only took her the blink of her heavily lashed eyes to regroup and come back with a counterattack. It was in her Colin's blood to fight back. It was in her Colin's blood to never let go without a fight. And now Elizabeth knew. Now she could show no fear. Liz may have been a mess since her husband left town. Abandoning her and her baby daughter years before, she was no longer a person to confront and believe that it would be an easy win. Elizabeth was a Collins. She could weather any wind from any storm and survive. So is that what you've been doing with your time here, looking into my background to find out what you could to use against me? Is that really what you call create a relationship with your niece? Elizabeth asked as she sat down on leathery sofas. I came here because you won't say a word about where my brother Paul went. You won't tell a soul what made him leave. You won't work with anyone on trying to find him. Discovering your bastard child only adds fuel to my fire. Tell me the truth. Paul discovered you had a baby before he married you and left you, didn't he? It's because of Victoria that my brother is gone. Why? Why would he leave and not tell us? Arabella demanded. You're a fool, Elizabeth replied. Arabella grinned. She could see Elizabeth wasn't really going to give up all the family secrets right then and there, but she had another option for Liz. Something that would up the ante. I have in my hands something that'll change your life forever. This is proof that you've been lying about your new governess. Who your new governess is, You've been lying all this time, and now I can see why Paul left you. Now I can see how treacherous you are, Elizabeth. Arabella scolded, her eyes staring deep into Elizabeth's eyes. Elizabeth lifted an eyebrow and turned away from Arabella, holding her breath. What exactly are you talking about? The Collins family matriarch wondered. Vicky, Arabella replied with one word. Arabella. Elizabeth turned around to Arabella, whose arms was now extending with the damning paperwork in her hand. Victoria is your child. This is all the proof I need to show Carolyn that you have been hiding not only the truth about her father's disappearance, but that she has a half-sister that you so cleverly disguised as David's governess. And all I need to do is show this to Carolyn, and you'll lose her forever. Hell, you might even lose Victoria. What kind of mother would you be to her anyway? She'd see right through you. She'd learn that she was your daughter, and instead of you welcoming her with open arms, you bloody hired her as the help. Arabella scoffed, neglecting to tell Elizabeth that she already told Carolyn. Do you really think they'd believe you? Who are you but some black widow with a penchant? For marrying rich old men on the verge of death to make a buck, Elizabeth shot back. Uncharacteristically bring up gossip about Arabella's 3 dead husbands and the circumstances surrounding each death. Arabella smiled again like the cat that ate the canary, but did not take Liz's bait. She only sat down next to her sister-in-law and put the envelope carrying Victoria's paperwork on Liz's lap. I wouldn't test me, Liz. Not when I hold all the cards, Arabella replied and pushed the paperwork over to Liz's hand. Elizabeth rolled her eyes and grabbed the envelope and pulled out the forms. It was all true. Arabella did indeed have all the forms and the truth in her hands. This seemed like a death sentence, something of a horrible nightmare that Arabella wouldn't now use to pervert whatever relationship she had with Carolyn into something dark and twisted, and poison her against her own mother. Liz could already see the battle lines being drawn between half-sister and half-sister over Elizabeth's love, something she was always dreading. Elizabeth calmly folded the forms back into the envelope and stood up. She walked over to a small bureau and pulled out the top drawer. She placed the envelope inside and reached over to the right side of the drawer and grippled the handle of a small handgun. The gun felt hot in her hand. It was like picking up an amber from a fireplace. She held it still inside the drawer, ready and loaded to pull it on Arabella before Arabella spoke again. You can do something about it, however. I'm not entirely cold-hearted. I wouldn't want to come between you and Carolyn, not in the slightest. This is unless you leave me no choice. There could be a conversation about compensation, however, Arabella said to Liz, who still had her back turned and her hand on the gun in the drawer. Money, I should have guessed, Liz said, releasing her grip on the gun, then turning back to her scheming sister-in-law, who had already told Carolyn and was plotting to kill Vicky. I think it's what my brother would want. He promised to take care of me, Arabella said. Did he now? Liz said, disgusted with Arabella. How much? $1 million, Arabella said to an august Liz. You're out of your mind. How can I give you $1 million? How would that even look? It's your money, Elizabeth. No one has to know how you spend it. It's $1 million by the end of the month, and I will be out of Collinsport before anyone even asks questions to where I've gone. And I'll take your little Vicky's secret with me forever, Arabella said, attempting to play both Liz and Carolyn for fools. And so far she was succeeding. What's all this? Roger said, coming in with his own stack of paperwork from the cannery for Elizabeth to look over and sign. A meeting of the minds, he joked. Raji, always so good to see you. How are things over the fish factory? Arabella asked, breaking eye contact with Liz and relishing in the fresh air Roger brought to the tense conversation. Fine, Roger replied, looking down his nose at Arabella like she was a lower form of blue blood than he. So what's going on? Why are you two so tense? I can feel it in the air, he added as he walked over to fill a drink at the wet bar. Nothing. Your sister and I were just discussing old family tropes. You know how Aunt so and so. What did you get your daughter for Christmas? Where's my brother? That kind of stuff. Girl talk, Arabella joked. Arabella thinks I have information on where Paul went all those years ago, and I've repeatedly told her I do not, Elizabeth said as she walked over to Roger and grabbed the paperwork from the Collins Fishing Co. Yes, Liz does deny she knows his whereabouts, Arabella said, now feeling a strange Collins sibling 2-on-1 attack coming. At any rate, Liz, think about what I said, will you? We'll talk again soon, Arabella then replied with a wink to Liz. She left Liz to go over her $1 million request and left Roger alone with Liz in the private library. She makes every inch of my skin crawl with disgust. What did she really want? Roger asked, as the ice in his drink clinked back into place after his deep sip. Never mind her, Elizabeth said, shaking her head as she flipped through the paperwork and signed off on things for the fleet. She has always rubbed you the wrong way, sister dear. But to the point where you would open that top drawer, Roger said, noticing Elizabeth's left arm, the drawer with her handgun in it. What? Liz said as she noticed, as she looked up to see her brother was now closing the drawer where he knew a gun was. He just looked at her with an expression telling her he was waiting for her to spill what was really happening. But every ever the secret keeper, in fact, the best in the family, Liz kept it simple. Roger, stay out of it. This is between Arabella's daughter and myself. I only went to the drawer because Liz paused. Listen, whatever it is, you can tell me. You're my sister. We're a team. What did she want? Why didn't you just shoot that freeloading harlot in her smug face? Roger said to Liz's shock. Stop it. Go on. Here, take this back to the office tomorrow morning and forget what you just told me. Forget you walked in on our tense conversation. Forget it all, Roger. Do you understand? You never saw us talking here, Elizabeth said in a state of panic. For she too knew something would have to change before Arabella got what she wanted, and Roger needed to stay clear of any potential wrongdoing for everybody's sake. Roger pursed his lips and bowed his head like a servant to his queen. He grabbed the forms Elizabeth had signed and began to make his way out of the room. But just before he left, he turned back and looked at his sister back again, looking out the dark draped window into the unknown. He wondered what was she thinking. He wondered what was perhaps plotting. She was deep in thought, deep in trouble, and all the telltale signs pointed to deep in danger. Roger walked back into the room towards the drawer, the gun. Elizabeth watched him. He pulled open the drawer as it was before, not noticing the new envelope with Vicky's secret studded inside, and looked at Elizabeth. Do what you have to do, he said, pointing to the open drawer. And the left his sister in the room. He left his sister in the room alone with her mind on the gun in the drawer. Bureau and Carolyn, as the sun began to set and the Atlantic breeze continued to flow over the sea into the town of Collinsport, in a frosty, fog-filled swirl, a beautiful blonde walked along a secluded patch of Widow's Hill called Lookout Point. Its rocky cliff-side vista was just a 15-minute walk between the mansion on Widow's Hill and a secondary street that led down to town. This was an area Carolyn, the beautiful blonde, often came to relieve her stress. She looked out past the dunes below and out into the great wide ocean, and feel the wind blow through her hair. She'd close her eyes and pretend the wind would blow all her troubles away. It was refreshing, it was invigorating, but it wasn't working, not this time. She wasn't just up on Lookout Point hoping to rid herself of her problems and the messy world her Aunt Arabella had exposed her to. To her. She was there because she was meeting someone special, someone she was falling in love with, but secretly. As the lighthouse down further out on the point spun around and around and illuminated Carolyn's hair, causing a sort of halo after each time the light hit her, he appeared. It was Bureau Calvert. Carolyn's handsome stranger was the same man who was also at the center of Arabella's investigation into the disappearance of her father. As soon as he appeared in the misty and darkened sky, She rushed over to him. They embraced and kissed deep and passionately. I thought I'd be waiting forever, Carolyn said. Sorry, I had a couple things to take care of. Did you talk to Arabella? Pierre asked as the lighthouse in the distance again turned Carolyn's hair into a flashing halo. I did. She told me everything. Sorry. When I suggested to her months ago that you'd be the perfect person to dig up where my father was, I had no idea what you'd find out. Vicky, my sister, Carolyn finally confessed at being the one that put Arabella up to hiring Bureau. I'm sorry, I couldn't find anything more about your dad as soon as he left town. All those years ago, his trail ran cold. The stuff on your mother, well, I didn't expect to find anything like that. When I went looking, Bureau replied, feeling strange knowing such a hidden secret of Carolyn's life before she did. Either way, thank you for all you've done, Carolyn replied in a smile as bright as the light from the lighthouse below. Are you going to be okay? Bureau wondered. Of course, my Aunt Bella is really the perfect person to handle all this. She's already on it. She's got a plan to make sure the truth is told, and that Carolyn paused. She had forgotten the rest of what Arabella had said, that they should have Vicky killed. It was unsettling to Carolyn. How could she have agreed to that? How could she have even entertained the notion of being involved with something so twisted? That what else did she say? Bureau asked, not realizing the woman he was in love with was plotting a crime. Nothing. I mean, she's very much involved, and I think she'll handle it all. I just have to take care of a few odds and ends before she makes her next move, Carolyn said, rethinking the entire plot to murder Vicky. Carolyn, you don't seem okay, Bureau noticed. I know it's a lot to take in, but lots of families have this type of surprise hidden in their family tree. No one is perfect. Maybe your mom just made a huge mistake with Vicky's dad, and she's just trying to make it up for it by having Vicky around. But still not around as one of the family. My sister Noelle and I have weird problems in our family too. You know that, Vera said, attempting to soften the spiny truths in Carolyn's porcupine of secrets. Family secrets. But Vicky is already a part of the family. My mother adores her, David adores her, and apparently my ex Justin adores her. And to tell you the truth, I kind of like her too. Maybe that's where some of my jealousy is coming from. Carolyn admitted as the wind and light filled her hair. I just don't want you to think your family is any different than anyone else, Bureau added. Like you and your sister. How is Noelle anyway? It's been a while since I've talked to her, Carolyn said, remembering her once close friendship with Noelle. She's good, considering everything that happened to her a few years ago, Bureau replied, skimming over his sister's past. Carolyn thought for a split second as something dawned on her. Noelle Clovert, Bureau's sister. Despite their differences in the past, perhaps Noelle could help Carolyn with the Vicky issue before it was too late, before Arabella did something they would all regret. Noelle had gifts. Something inside of her helped her see the world much more clear than the average person. She was a clairvoyant and special. She was a psychic with a profound connection to nature and the world around her. Carolyn and Noelle had a falling out a few years back, but perhaps bygones would be bygones. I should go see her soon. I really should. We were friends, Carolyn mentioned, shivering as the wind kissed her exposed skin. Listen, it's really cold. Why don't you rush back home and get warm and I'll call you later? I'd love to take you out. A real date. Bureau said, grabbing Carolyn close to keep her warm. A real date? Really? She beamed. Really, Bureau said, gushing as the waves below crashed up against the rocks. My mother will flip, Carolyn joked, referring to Elizabeth's picky nature when it came to men she loved. Because, Bureau said, looking down at himself, noticing they're different in skin tone. Oh, no, nothing like that. You're just Joe Haskell, that's all, Carolyn said with a sigh. Oh, well, maybe I can be better than Mr. Joe Haskell, Bureau said again, pulling Carolyn in close. Her kiss just as deep and passionate as the first one. As Bureau pulled away from her, she kept her eyes closed, his mouth still staining her lips like a happy memory. She opened them and looked deep into his dark eyes. She smiled. All the wind and sea air could not take away all her trouble this time, but somehow she felt like Bureau could. You already are better, Carolyn said, comparing Bureau to Joe. It was 15 past 10 p.m. The house seemed quiet, with the exception of Roger busily drinking his fourth highball in the drawing room, alone while reading the evening paper. The fire in the hearth cracked and popped with a fever that warmed his whole body, even though he was already warm from the alcohol and rushing through his veins. India slowly made her way down the dark staircase with her shoes off. As she moved slowly down each step, she could not imagine the terrible plots surrounding her. At the very moment Vicky's life was in danger, and in a very real reality, so was India's, as the two women were so intertwined in body and mind. Carrying Vicky's shoes in her hand, India slipped past the drawing room doorway as Roger continued to boastfully grumble over the news in the paper. India pushed open a door around the corner from the foyer that impeded into a second vestibule lit with only one dim lamp. The walls were covered in a dark ruby red wallpaper and led down a hall to the doorway that opened into a back patio. Suddenly India's head began to spin. Her mind began to grow foggy. She heard a voice say, I can't breathe. I can't see. What is happening? It was Vicky, deep inside her own conscience. India could hear her thoughts. Vicky's inner fears were trying to break free from her own mind and split from India all futile attempts. India grabbed the back of her neck with her left and braced herself up against the patio door with her other. She closed her eyes and fell into the darkness. When she opened her eyes, she was standing in a black room, or what seemed like a black room in her own body, and standing before her was Victoria Winters. Who are you? Where am I? Vicky screamed into the black void that was her own consciousness. Vicky, please calm down. You and I have a lot to work together. We have to be one to make sure we can get out of this together, India said. How can you be me and I be you? I just don't understand. How this is happening, Vicky asked. There's a lot to unpack, and I just need you to trust me. I'm going to get us out of this no matter what. I promise you, India said. But who are you? Vicky asked, still unsure of what was happening. India, I'm India. I'm a friend. It'll all be explained as soon as I find Barnabas, India explained. The name came out of India's mouth. It felt like a swift punch in the gut. For some reason, the name made Vicky freeze in place. She could sense danger. She could sense darkness. She was feeding off of India's emotions. Their minds were so intertwined that Vicky knew that whoever Barnabas was meant incredible danger was near. Please help. Bring me back, Vicky said as her body began to fade back into the dark corners of her mind. Indy opened her eyes, Vicky's eyes, and she was back in on the patio. The dizziness was gone, and Justin was waiting. India hurried through the patio where Justin was standing just outside, standing against a tree, lighting a cigarette in the dark. India only saw his illuminated face as the light from the match touched the cigarette in his mouth. He whistled for her to hurry as she carefully closed the door behind her and rushed out of the patio to Justin. You okay? Justin asked, looking into Vicky's pale face. Vicky contacted me. She wants to be free, India replied to Justin's frightened reaction. Do you think we can do this? Justin wondered. We have to. We have no choice. Where'd you park? India asked in a whisper as she replaced her shoes. Just off to the side there, Justin said, pointing to the hidden thicket of trees with the hand the cigarette was hanging from. India watched as the smoke from his cigarette encircled his wrist in swirls of gray smoke. She snickered and grabbed the cigarette out of his hand and threw it to the ground. These are gross, she hissed. Justin looked at her like she had three heads. India quickly realized that in 1966, cigarettes weren't altogether seen the same way as they were in 2019. She smiled shyly and mouthed, sorry. Let's just get to this cemetery already before I change my mind, Justin said, flipping the collar of his leather jacket and rushing India to his awaiting car. The two drove in silence all the way to Eagle Hill Cemetery. They didn't know what to say to each other. They didn't know what they were even doing or what they'd even be looking for. David mentioned the Collins mausoleum and jewels and treasure the dead family members may have been buried with. India for sure had no idea exactly what Barnabas had hidden in the family mausoleum. Could it be a clue to where he was, or he was there himself? The fear and uncertainty of it all silenced both Justin and India. The whole way to Eagle Hill, and just as the fog began to settle low on the town below, they arrived to a gated-off old cemetery that even in the hottest of summers would chill a person to their very core. Justin and India again hid Justin's car in a low-lying tree, carefully made their way through the blacked-out cemetery. As they walked, India couldn't help read the names of some of the people buried there over the years that lived, and especially the years they died all at the same time. Ruby Tate, gone too soon, born 1770, died 1795. Maud Brown, taken from us horribly, born 1769, died 1795. Nathan Forbes, lost to us but not forgotten, 1772, 1795. Crystal Cabot, beloved daughter, 1763 born, died 1795. India felt a sinking feeling in the pit of her stomach. It was like she was going to throw up. She could feel something coming up here. Nerves were on edge. Her heart was pounding. Those names, all those names. And just as she threw, though they'd never arrived, Justin stopped her in her tracks. India took her eyes off of the names from the ground and looked up at a Gothic-style gated mausoleum with the name Collins etched in stone above the gate entrance. The fog surrounded them like two giant arms, pulling them in close. The night air was cold and wet. India tightened the belt on her coat and took a gulp of the ice-cold Atlantic sea air that tasted like salt. "You ready?" Justin asked, grabbing her by the hand. "I don't know," India replied. "It's now or never. The quicker we get in there, the quicker we find clues to what Barnabas' next plan is," Justin answered. India agreed and squeezed his hand before letting it go. She walked slowly to the gate. Her hands gripped the lock, and she pulled hard, shaking the gate, causing the chains to rattle in the wind. "No key?" Justin asked. India wasn't giving up. She had to get in the mausoleum that night. India then reached into the half-up ponytail of her hair and pulled out the bobby pin that was holding it up, releasing Victoria's thick locks of black hair down to her shoulders. India then pulled one arm of the bobby pin and the second down, creating a two-pronged hook that she shoved into the lock of the gate. She began to twist and turn and twist and turn the bobby pin with all she had, and it's all that she had. "Do you know what you're doing?" Justin wondered in a whisper, and before India could answer, the lock snapped open. "I guess I do," she said in a shocked voice. The two then slowly made their way into the mausoleum, both shaking from the cold and from fright. Up the steps they went, crunching along, each step on the dead leaves that had fallen from the trees that swayed in the wind and fog above. The door was unlocked. There was no key. There was no one there. There was no one to keep out, but there was there someone to keep in? "Look," Justin said as they entered, pointing to the three solid stone coffins. India's eyes watered. She had no idea what she was getting herself into. All she wanted was to find Barnabas and get him to remove her from Vicky's body and send her back to her own time. Everything else was just noise. She had to keep telling herself that. None of it would last. Not the fear, not the terror, not the darkness that surrounded this whole situation. She needed to get it over with. She slowly made her way to the headstone on the main wall of the mausoleum, but was suddenly disappointed. "Joshua, Naomi, Sarah," she said to Justin. "So where do you think all this information or documents are buried?" He replied, rushing over to her to read them as well. "We have to look inside," Indy answered cryptically. As the two contemplated opening up the three coffins, a loud howl came from just beyond the stone structure's stained glass windows. It was loud and chilling, and it felt as if it made their blood turn to ice. "Jesus," Justin said as the goosebumps began to cover his arms. A tickle went up India's spine, too. She sat down on Joshua's stone sarcophagus and buried her face in her hands. She couldn't believe what she was about to do. She couldn't bring herself to try to open these stone cases up to see if there were any information buried with the deceased. How could things have turned to this, she wondered. How could she have gotten to this point? Listen, we just started this. We just started. I know it seems horrible and sick, but we can't give up now. We're going to get you back to normal and back to your own time. Or maybe, he said before pausing. What? She asked, looking up at him with a tear-stained face. Maybe you can stay here in this time. I would, I could take care of you. I know who you really are. I believe you're India. I'd help you for as long as you need me. Justin replied, the chivalrous 60s young man showing his softer side. India smiled and put her hand on his face, caressing him. She felt a small hint of hope with his words, but she knew that could not be. This was not Barnabas's plan. It could not have been. Justin, I can't stay here. This is all wrong. She said. He smiled and nodded his head and digressed. I have to believe that David sending us here was for a reason, and we have to find out why. This has to be it. This has to be the place that will tell us how to find Barnabas. India continued as she stood up. Alright, so where do we start? Do we open these up? He wondered. Let's look around. First, maybe there's something else. A hidden drawer, a smaller private box, something else, India hoped. The idea of grave robbing still unsettling in her mind. The two began to pore over the interior of the mausoleum, every inch, every corner, carefully pulling up on things to see if they lifted, or pushing things to see if they fell, revealing a secret passage. They even pulled up against the walls to hopefully discover a false one. Justin finally pushed so hard on the back wall it moved slightly, dropping dust on his shoes into the ground. Here, this one. This is it, India. Look, Justin explained, showing her the tiniest movement in the wall. Will it budge any more than that? She asked in excitement. The two began pushing and pushing and pushing on the wall, but nothing moved. Nothing could get it to move. Then it clicked. It must not be able to move unless something triggered it. It has to be some sort of lock or a latch, Justin said as he looked up. And just like that, there was a face of the lion with a ring in its mouth. Justin pulled the ring. With the ring still firmly in Justin's hand, the false wall that held up the plaque with Naomi Collins' epitaph moved and revealed a staircase that led down deep under the cemetery. India gasped and quickly latched herself onto Justin's body as his eyes grew like two giant silver dollars. Come on, he whispered. As the two descended down the dark staircase made of cold, hard stone, they began to pass torches that were placed on both sides of the secret walls below. With every torch they passed, the one in front of them sparked a flame on their own, illuminating the way for Justin and India to follow as they pushed cobwebs and dust that fell from above. The dark staircase finally led them into a dark, circular chamber deep below the cemetery. Suddenly, as if commanded to do, 5 torches hanging in the room sanctimoniously lit, one by one, in bursts of fire like snapping of fingers, revealing the chained coffin of Barnabas Collins. India could feel the ring around her neck become warm. It was so warm it began to burn her skin. She pulled it out of her blouse, and it was glowing a very dim light only around the onyx in its center. This must be it, India said, staring down at the coffin. This must be where Barnabas is. They looked at each other, searching for the other to say what to do next. As the howl again came from outside, this time echoing over and over again inside the buried lair where the coffin lay. Okay, do it, Justin said, his eyes still wide with fear. Unlock him. India was shaken. She had no idea what she was doing. She quickly reached in her pocket and pulled out the warped bobby pin and twisted the old locks around the coffin. Each one snapped as if they were made in 1966, not from the 18th century. It was as if these locks had been waiting for India all this time. The chain suddenly fell to the ground, and all of it coiled up in three small, neat circles just under the coffin, all on their own. India screamed and backed away at the sight of the chains moving on their own. And just as she did, the lid of the coffin lifted up slowly. The lid creaked open like a dark, evil, calm clamshell, inch by inch. Jesus, Justin said again, his heart pounding in his ears. And just as the moon lifted high in the sky in its most center place of the night, midnight, Barnabas Collins levitated from his eternal sleep deep inside his purple velvet-lined coffin. He stood up and turned his head to the right and stared India dead in the eyes. Thank you, child, he said with a small quiver of a fancy accent. Barnabas, she said, finally putting the man to the face in the painting. Barnabas stepped out of the coffin by levitating again through the air. He bowed his head, then walked over to India and snapped the necklace from her neck, removed the ring and placed it firmly in his hand, once again connecting all his forces in one being. Please send me back now. Send me back home. Now, please, India begged. In due time. You have no idea just how much danger you are in, do you? Barnabas said. This can't be real. I can't be seeing this, Justin said, his panic becoming more and more intense. I am real. I've been real. And I will be real forever. What you two have done is set in motion a correction of the past. Something I should have done decades ago. What you two have done for me by releasing you before I was set to be released in real time. Because of you and your hard work getting me out before any original time by a man named Loomis, I can now reverse course, change the future, do good things. I can set the curse backwards, and instead of perpetrating the devil inside our family, I can cure it. I will be the cure to our own demise. But all that is because of you, India. I chose you. I chose you specifically to do this for me. For us, Barnabas explained, now holding Vicky's face in his hand, but speaking to India, who was locked inside of her. Why me? Why in Vicky's body? Why this time? She asked, tears in her eyes. The family in 1966, I feel as though, was where the most damage was done. Elizabeth, David, Carolyn, even Roger. Most especially Victoria, the others from my past, Barnabas said, scoffing about thinking of his father, his mother, and his devilish uncle. Well, let's just say they're too far gone. It's too late for them. I can't turn that clock back, but here I can. But why put me in Vicky's body? Indy asked again, tears streaming down Vicky's perfect face. Indy, your future and real body does not exist in 1966. Over the years, I have learned that moving through time in a body that does not belong in that period causes more trouble than you can imagine. It causes a tear in time fabric that I've discovered causes the more holes for the future. The many times I have traveled back and forth in time with someone from the future, I had no idea of this. It was one reason there was so much more danger and treachery. When I returned to the correct time, the body from the future had broken the sacred bond between time and space where foreign bodies do not belong, putting your future made body in a body like Victoria's that belonged here secured that this tear in time did not occur, Barnabas explained. Okay, fine, that's fine. Now you're done, right? Now I can go back. Now you can send me back. And free Vicky? And he replied impatiently, Not yet, Barnabas answered as the distant animal again howled its cruel howl. Why not? India exclaimed. Your purity, a new place among this family, is the energy and source of my salvation. I need you. I cannot part from you yet until this curse is dead and gone. You cannot return, and there is a bounty on your Victoria's head. Destroying this threat and correcting my various mistakes in a time will finally rid this family of one of this many curses, healing their future generations, which includes you, India. I must and will eliminate the attempt on Vicky's life first. Then you, India, may go, Barnabas said, referring to Arabella's plot to kill Vicky, that he supernaturally overheard through his painting on the foyer wall. Indy and Justin were in shock. They had no idea what to do next. Barnabas grabbed his cane from his coffin and smiled at them with a grin that seemed coy, conniving, untrustworthy. But India had no choice. She had to follow him. She knew that one way or another Barnabas would get his way, and the only chance she'd get at returning home was to follow his lead. Justin grabbed India as Barnabas began his ascent up the dark staircase up to the surface. Are you going to be okay with this guy? He questioned. I have to. I can't stop him now. Whatever he's planned to right all these wrongs and remove this bounty on me or Vicky, whatever that means. I have to do it. I have to let him take control now. It's my only way home, India said. What about Julia? You said that maybe she would be able to help you too, Justin asked, reminding her of her other plan. I can't think of her now. I have to trust Barnabas. It may be too late, India said, feeling hopeless and having to wait for Barnabas to correct it all himself. Trust? How can you, Justin replied, this heart and mind both refusing to even entertain trusting the man he saw come out of a coffin. We just have to, Justin. Trusting Barnabas is all I have right now, India said in Vicky's voice. Trust me. You can trust me. We can figure this out without him. I know that you're scared, but Your other plan to meet Julia, Justin said, holding India's arm before a deep echoed voice came from the darkened stairwell. Do not straggle I'm sorry, staggle behind. We have no time to lose, Barnabas' disembodied voice echoed. Justin was worried he didn't know what to do next, but he knew that he would do anything for India, anything to keep her safe, anything to show her how much he was beginning to care for her, even if it meant following Barnabas Collins to an open mouth of an early grave. So that's the read along. I'm gonna do a Barnabas Collins retrospective before I give my review. You gotta remember, no one really knew where Barnabas was in 1966. No one knew he was in the mausoleum other than the people of 1795, other than his father and Ben Stokes. Everything that was written about Barnabas in the Bible was everything that we've already known, that supposedly went to England and died, and those records weren't really kept up to date, so no one knew of Barnabas being buried in that secret mausoleum, just like in the original series. And what I'll say is that him bringing India back to put in Vicky's body, I think he gave some sort of, Barnabas's macabre explanation of he chose her because she was from the future, she represented the future. Let's be honest, though, too, India does not know of the Collins family's history either. So he needed somebody really who would absolutely listen to him and have no choice but to fucking listen to him, because Barnabas can be a son of a bitch. And I think he is being a little bit of a one here. I mean, he chooses this girl who does not know the exact accounts of the history. She only knows what she's been told, and a lot of what she's been told is sort of a lie. I mean, I've sort of covered this in my previous reviews. So I think that, in my opinion, from my reader's perspective, from my character retrospective of Barnabas, that's why he chose India. He chose India because he wanted somebody who could not quote him on the family history, could not question him. He wanted somebody who, when he spoke to them, who would be sort of, I don't want to say naive, but would be sort of arrogant about the past. Well, even arrogant. What's the word I'm looking for? Ignorant about the past. Someone who didn't know, right? India doesn't know. She only knows what she's been told, and what she's been told is sort of a lie. And they didn't lie to her to lie to her. They lied to her because it's not like they knew Barnabas was going to pull some shit. It's not like they knew, oh, Barnabas is going to send India back and pet. No, they didn't know that. No one knew that. That's just something Barnabas planned. And he chose her. He chose this girl, India, and he put her in Vicky's body because he did not want to create the ripple effect. And I think another thing too is Julia Hoffman going to come into play? Yeah, I do believe so. You got to remember, Julia Hoffman did not know Barnabas in 1966, and that's sort of another thing I'm wondering: is Barnabas going to talk to Justin and India about Julia, either involving her or not involving her? You would think, from my perspective, again, I'm giving my opinion before I give my actual review, my character retrospective opinion. You would think less is best, because, you don't want to tell too many people what's going on. And I think Barnabas has taken one hell of a chance trusting Justin Patterson. I mean, yeah, he may be he may care for India. He may be head over the heels. He may just be wanting to bang. Who knows, you know? But he's taking a hell of a chance. Barnabas is trusting Justin. But we'll see. We'll see what goes on there. It's very interesting. What's my review? I love the chemistry between Arabella and Roger. And Arabella and Liz was really good. I love Carolyn is, to me, a very lost soul right now in this story. She's so unsure of not just herself, but what she wants to do. And it's always been a danger for Carolyn because her temper causes such dramatic knee-jerk reactions that tend to have effects, and not just on her, but on her whole family. Very, very good. I enjoyed it. Link's going to be in the description box. Again, I'm over an hour. Hope you guys enjoyed this. My other 2 videos are coming right after this. Link's going to be in the description box. Like, share, comment, subscribe. See ya.